I didn't plan to find the fortress. It found me through a map. I did not bifold it into a guidebook that never had inserts. Between pages about quiet villages and their cheeses, someone had stitched a thin, brittle sheet. Blackstone Fortress. The line work so detailed I could almost feel the weight of its walls. I know how maps lie. I make them for a living, turning landscapes into arguments that look like truth. But every cartographer learns the same secret early. The world edits us back. We think we're drawing it. It is drawing us. The map showed a path that does not appear on official surveys. A track like a scar along a ridge. Handwritten notes in tiny script. Approach at dusk. The gate reads what you are, not who. Another line. Do not answer the roll call. I closed the guidebook and should have thrown it away. But that night, the hotel room was too clean for sleep, and the wind outside had the exact voice of a place that remembers you before you arrive. I unfolded the map again. It smelled of dust that had learned the names of soldiers. I packed at dawn. The road into the high country begins as if it changes its mind with every turn. Sheep fields, stone walls, a river that twists until it forgets its own source. Then no houses, no fences. The land widens its mouth and swallows your sense of scale. I passed an old mile marker with numbers that had bled in the rain. The sky leaned low, the way a ceiling leans in an interrogation room. Crows tracked the car in an untidy choir, lifting and setting, as if the horizon itself were breathing dot at the last lullaby. The map's red line left the tarmac and pretended to be Earth again. I killed the engine. Silence came like a verdict. I should have turned back there. The wind said so. Even the heather said so. Brushing my boots with the kind of touch that means count your steps and keep the number to yourself. I took the pack, took the printed map, and left the known behind. The hill is taller than it looks. Some heights are like that. They have a trick of eating your breath without making a scene. As I climbed, the light dimmed. The day had started clear. It grew the color of iron filings. I reached the shoulder where, according to the insert, the fortress first notices you. I laughed once to feel human. The sound went nowhere. It was as if the air had been taught not to return voices. The last 100 yards were cut from an old road. Cart ruts fossilized into stone. These grooves were not Roman. They were angrier, the width wrong, the pitch more like a drag than a pull. I kept my eyes on the ground because the ridge was beginning to look back. Then I saw it, not a ruin, not a castle pining for tourists. A structure that had not decided the century. Blackstone, as promised. Walls that rose out of bedrock as if anchored beneath it. Arrow slits like shut eyes in an unkind face. Towers that had learned not to cast shadows where they did not mean to. Between me and the gate, a patch of ground where nothing grew. That it felt like walking across a sentence that had judged me already. The gate confirmed what the map had confessed. There was no keyhole, only a heavy wooden span banded with iron that remembered fire. A ring hung from a metal boss the size of a plate too cold for the weather. To clean for neglect. In small letters, scorched into the lintel. If you can read this, you are not the first. I put my palm on the wood. It had the temperature of a mouth after the last word of a long argument. The ring shifted by itself, no joke, just enough to wake the hinge. I didn't pull. The gate opened as if I had gotten an answer correct that I had never asked. The air beyond was older. That is not poetry. It was air that had been patient longer than any living thing. The gate closed behind me in a way gates aren't supposed to. No clatter, no show, just a firm decision. I was inside. You feel watched differently in a fortress. It isn't personal, it's arithmetic. The angles study you, the walls have solved for you. The arrow slits, their thin mouths were spaced in a rhythm that once meant survival, and now meant accounting. As I crossed the outer ward, the slits admitted light reluctantly. Dust drifted with purpose, as if each grain had somewhere to report. Above, battlements refused to crumble. A fortress that doesn't ruin gracefully is a fortress that has not finished its job. I passed an oubliette mouth, just a circle of docker. Black cemented shuttered, a line of hooks too small for anything honest. A set of steps climbed to a wall walk where someone had once promised to meet someone else at dusk, and failed. I didn't call out. The place felt allergic to names. When I stopped to breathe, the air returned the favor. From 3 different arrow slits at once, I heard the same soft exhale, in sync, not a draft, not a trick. 3 measured breaths that belonged to no lungs I could see. I moved on as if I had not heard them. The fortress prefers people who don't ask it to repeat itself. The inner courtyard should have kept the prints of sentries' garrison boots, merchants' shoes, children who weren't supposed to be here. But the ground was a flat, compacted skin, neither dust nor stone, a surface that forgot the instant you pressed it. I tried, I stepped, paused, stepped back. No mark thought in the center stood a wellhead of iron, lidded, its lid chained with links like old thumb bones. A rope was coiled on a crossbar, the fibers gray with use, not with time. Beside it, an inverted shield leaned as if someone had just put it down to stretch their arms and would be back in a moment. The maps, margin notes surfaced in my head. Do not answer the roll call. Roll call. In a place that keeps no prints. I stood a little to the left of the well because the exact center of old courtyards is where whatever the place believes about itself is strongest. Somewhere, a flag rope tapped once against a pole. When it was done, the courtyard breathed out, and I felt a change, a tiny pressure at the back of my tongue, like a word about to say me. I left the courtyard before it could remember too much. The chapel was a pocket of stone that had learned two kinds of silence, the kind that forgives and the kind that bites. A broken altar leaned under a window that offered light as a technicality. On the wall, a faint fresco remained, men without faces, kneeling toward a shape that might have been a sword or a mast or a bone, depending on which century needed it. On a pew, a missal lay open to a page where the ink had fled. Only the rubric survived. Names are to be recited even if the bodies do not come. A line below it had been scratched with a nail. They always come. I sat and listened. The air here carried the shade of old smoke, the kind from cheap candles burnt down to stubs in a hurry. I waited for the thing that always happens to people like me in places like this, sound too small to be dramatic and too sincere to ignore. It came as a murmur under the floor, not rats, not pipes, a list being read by a voice too tired to be angry. I didn't catch the words, only the cadence, names, a roll call. I stood very quietly and left my breath behind on the pew, the way you leave a coin so the dead think you paid. That central keep was intact, an insult. Whole walls in a world of ruins are proof of continued intent. The spiral staircase inside was tight enough that you could fight one man easily, and two men not at all. The stone of the central spine felt warm under my palm where it should have been cold. As I climbed, I counted for comfort. 17 steps to a slit, 19 to a landing, 13 to a door with no door. I know my own habits. When I start measuring, I'm bargaining. I was bargaining with a structured dot at the first landing. An iron bracket held a torch that was not there. The soot above it was new, not pristine, new. I touched it and came away with a thumb that knew the last hour. By the second landing, the staircase sounded wrong under my bootsless echo. More absorption. Stone doesn't learn to listen like that, unless it has been fed stories for a very long time. On the third landing, a corridor turned like a question into the keep's heart. I followed it because it would have followed me otherwise. You know the kind of room that isn't a room. Long, low, half corridor, half storage, used when there's too much winter. This was that. Hooks on one side, niches on the other. A table that had never been just a table. On the table lay dust arranged with such concentration that I mistook it for writing. It was writing, but not in any alphabet I pretend to know. Curves and crossstrokes like footprints of small birds who had learned grammar. The dust itself shimmered a fraction, as if each grain held a decision. Along the wall, a rack held spears with heads like blunt teeth. A single helmet waited with its jaw open. There was no rust, only a dull finish. The way metal gets when it has been touched recently by hands that do not sweat. I leaned over the dust text and exhaled by accident. The nearest symbol blurred, drifted, and the line reformed a hair to the right, as if the sentence had not liked where I had put my breath. I whispered, "I'm only looking." The dust-held dot at the far end. A door waited, with no ambition to open. Above it, another inscription carved into stone this time, in a language I had earned. They expect to be counted. I left before the dust could teach me how to pronounce the room. I returned to the courtyard because I owed the well an apology. The chain across the lid was heavy but not locked. The padlock was theater open, the shackle threaded but not closed. I lifted the lid a fraction. Air rose not, cold, not warm air. The temperature of questions. The smell was older than rot, younger than stone. The rope on the crossbar tightened without my hand. I did not touch it. I said, because I am not brave, only practiced. I won't pull up what you mean for someone else. From below came a sound that a well should not make. An exhale around a name, not my name, not the one I carry now, the one I carried when I was 19 and believed maps were a way to avoid promises. I backed away, closed the lid, threaded the lock again. The chain lay exactly as it had before, each link in the same place. I had tested the fortress's patience. It had tested mine and found it wanting. When I turned to go, the wind died for 1 second. A clean, harsh silence pressed the courtyard flat. And from the chapel, the roll call began. I told myself I would keep walking, that the list had nothing to do with me. Then it found a rhythm. My feet knew. The voice was not loud. It was built to carry across a yard, and up a wall, and into the ear of a man who had learned to be where he was supposed to be. The map's note returned. Do not answer the roll call. I kept my mouth shut, but my bones turned toward the sound with an obedience I thought I had retired. The names meant nothing, and everything's syllables snapped clean, vowels cut to save time. After each name, a breath. After every third, a thud below the yard, like a drum that had chosen stone for a skin dot. At the 7th name, my heart tried to step forward. At the 12th, my tongue tried to lift. At the 15th, voice paused in a way that expected a short reply. I clenched my teeth until the impulse passed, like weather dot. By the 20th, I understood the trick. The list was not names. It was roles. It was calling positions, obligations, debts owed in spine and wrist and will. If I answered, I would not be saying present. I would be saying use me. I left the courtyard on legs that had not asked permission. Behind me, the roll call continued, and did not mark me absent. The lower level of the keep had a door I had avoided. The one doors, in stories, always are. It opened when I did not touch it. Steps fell away, wide and old, slick at the edges with a polish made from centuries of friction that wasn't feet at the bottom. A hall like a throat, lined with alcoves where men did not sleep. In each alcove, the suggestion of presence indentations on pallets that had never known a body, a tipped cup that never emptied, a set of dice mid-throw, the pips arguing in the dust and refusing to land. Across the hall, racks of armor stood as if learning to stand, a pair of gauntlets hung, fingers relaxed, ready to take a sword that wasn't there yet. I saw the movement in the corner of my eye and told myself it was breath rising from stone. Then a strap lifted just an inch and fell back, the way a hand tests the weight of an old task. I walked through, careful as a thief in his own house. What do you steal from the uncounted? They have already given everything you're worth. At the far end, a door with bars the width of 4 fingers opened to a small yard where no sky could reach. Along the wall, marks cut in tallies, not days, not kills, weights, the count of how many times a man had stood where. He was told until the order came that never did. I ran my hand over the last tally. The groove was fresh enough to know a name. It traced my palm with the shape of a map line. Above, the roll call ended not with a word, but with a silence that wanted one from me. I said nothing, but the fortress decided that was an answer. I left those halls quietly, because some armies you do not wake. I reached the gate before the day did. The fortress had begun to lighten, not with sunrise, but with a courtesy it grants at the end of a negotiation. The air tasted newer. My boots found their sound again. The courtyard still kept no prints. I turned only once to see the towers at that hour, when things look honest. They did not look at me back. They looked past me, as if already measuring the next arrival. The gate opened without drama. It wanted me to leave because I had not given it what it wanted, and had not taken what it offered. That kind of refusal bores old places more than anger. On the track, the world found color again. The hill remembered how not to eat light. The crows lost interest. My breath belonged to me mostly. At the lobby, I sat in the car and unfolded the map to tear it. Before I could, I saw a change. A small note in the same tight script, added where the courtyard was sketched, absent and marked. Below it, a line I will not forget. They will call again. Do not be there to hear it. I closed the book and put it in the glove compartment, not because I am wise, but because I have learned to postpone mistakes. If you ever find a fortress that should not exist on a map, that should not be in your hands, remember this. Places built to count men do not stop counting when the men are gone. Some walls learn the arithmetic of souls. And if you hear a roll call in a language you never learned, hold your breath. Teeth together, hands at your sides. Because, if you answer even a little loop, won't say present, you'll say belong, and the fortress will count you correctly. End.